it makes me think about both of my granddaddies. One was running away from boarding school, and the other one was growing up in the Jim Crow era in the South.
Hmm.
And both of them faced much more hostility than I ever had, I ever will.
Welcome, everybody. This is Jermaine Jackson, sports producer here at Daybreak Star Radio, the only station indigenizing the airwaves. And today, I have the wonderful pleasure of speaking with an Alaska Native basketball legend, the talented athlete, Damen Bell-Holter. Damen has played professional basketball for over 10 years and has been uplifting and inspiring the youth and indigenous communities through basketball camps, workshops, speaking engagements, and more. We're excited to get an inside look at his journey. Damen, how are you doing today? Thank you for joining us.
Tonight law, lang is host the good night lagen, Sigrid Chinu Egan, Tech National Egan, Tau Kunstiao Egan, Sa Dike Ethan now Egan, and half long stones, Udika on, Tashlanas Iskian, Pudge Adi, Gusu Walgen, Hadas Iskian, Fingada Iskian, African Egan, Hiktahanla Iskian, Pong, Alnas Egan, Pau Ganashish. Yeah, I always express I'm culturally Haida. I'm Haida Thinga, and my father's people are from Africa, and we kind of have a shared lineage. But I always express, like I said, I'm culturally Haida. Lanos is my Haida clan, and then Kajadi is my Tlingit clan, and my Tlingit side is from Keithpong over there in Cape, Alaska. So I grew up immersed in the Haida culture. So that's kind of the culture that I publicly represent.
When did you first discover your love for basketball and what initially drew you to the sport?
When you travel throughout Southeast Alaska, and also just through the state of Alaska or British Columbia, you consistently hear of Haida athletes, and I could count 10 guys in my lifetime from my village of 300 people who had the potential to play college basketball. And I just like with the football background, like we know what it looks like. So I remember going down as a 14, 15-year-old. I'm playing AAU with Isaiah Thomas, Spencer Hawes, John Brockman, Jamel McMillan, all these future NBA players. I'm going back home to my village. I'm like, I think I think these guys could play at CLU. I think these guys could go to a JUCO somewhere down there. I think, so that was always in the back of my mind. And I was really fortunate that I came up in a very, very tough environment in some of the most competitive open gyms in the state of Alaska, where all of these guys that I said were really, really good, they were all in their primes. So I'm a sixth, seventh grader going to the gym, playing against grown men every night, getting cussed out, getting, pushed really hard, getting, these guys are really physical, and they're just tough guys. All these guys, fisherman culture. Where I'm from, like Hydaburg, basketball was it growing up. Just like in a lot of communities in Southeast Alaska, or just when you see the res ball and everything, like basketball, because it's the cheapest sport, so it's the most accessible sport. So when I was a kid, we were fishing in the mornings, and then we'd go to the basketball court in the afternoon, and we'd have an open gym at night where we'd go watch the men. And then when sixth, seventh grade rolled around, where we were allowed to start playing with the men, then that was what it was for me. Seventh grade, I got to come down to Seattle. I got to see the 76ers, and I got to see the Toronto Raptors 2 days later. So I got to see AI in person. I got to see Vince in person. Right after that, I go home back to my class of 12 kids, and I'm like, hey guys, I'm gonna be on TV someday. And that kind of became my narrative moving forward. Was I don't care what anybody thinks. I don't care what anyone has to say. I'm going to be on TV someday.
Can you explain some, differences that you saw that helped you get to the pros?
I went to Edgecombe my freshman year, and I always tell people about Archie Young. Archie Young, he's in the Alaska State Basketball Hall of Fame. When I came across Archie, 6'4", big dude, and he was a former college basketball player. So he was very he coached like a college program. That's how he ran his program. You miss practice, you got 2 weeks of stairs. He really, and I had never experienced like something like that. So what happens, as we know this for a lot of folks who come from the res, who come from a small community, when you're able to get away with so much because of big fish in a small pond syndrome, you're able to skip class because you know that you're the star athlete. You're able to do this, you're able to do that. I was doing all that back home in Hydaburg, and I come across Archie, and the very first time I interacted with him, he said to me, I said, hey, what's up, Archie? He said, hey, it's Coach. I'll see you tomorrow at 5 a.m. So that was a precedent he set. I always look at it from the ancestor standpoint, is how the ancestors put all the right people in my path along the right at the right time. I have a sense of survivor's remorse because all my brothers are in prison right now. A lot of my brothers are in prison. One of my good friends from middle school, he passed away a couple of days ago. A lot of the guys I grew up with, and that's why I always express, I grew up with a lot of talented people, talented, artistic, charismatic, but the difference was is that I used to think I was the gifted one, but we all had our own gifts. It's just that my gifts were recognized at the right time, and I had the right people pushing me along the path.
So how has your cultural heritage, both your Indigenous, your Native American, and your Black African American side, how has that influenced your journey in basketball and in life in general?
I think it's created that sense of identity and belonging. Because a big thing for me is like I didn't meet my dad till I was 20, and I was again really fortunate. My mom, she prioritized me going down to Seattle to stay with my aunt every summer. So my aunt, she was bringing me to Rainier. She was bringing me to
Okay.
these different areas, and she was making sure that I had a connection to a Black community. She'd bring me to the Indian Center. She'd bring me to Chinatown. Like, and everyone had rapport with my aunt. So my aunt passed in 2020, but uh, her that upbringing and her making sure I had connection to other communities and culture while I'm back home doing hunting, I'm fishing, I'm learning the language, I'm dancing, I'm having that connection. And I look at it like that as like I tell people all the time, I wouldn't have made it to any professional ranks if I didn't have a firm understanding of who I was representing. A guy that I really look up to, Giassi Ross out there. I'm not sure if you're familiar. Giassi, he's Blackfoot and his father's black, but he put things in perspective. He said, it makes me think about both of my granddaddies. One was running away from boarding school, and the other one was growing up in the Jim Crow era in the South.
Mhm.
And both of them faced much more hostility than I ever had. I ever will.
Can you share a standout moment in your basketball career that like has helped shape you as a player?
One of my favorite teammates of all time, my freshman year, we're playing at Wake Forest in the ACC. It's like
Hmm.
19,500 sold out. It's loud, crazy. It's Demon Deacons, Al Farouk Aminu on that team, Ish Smith, a couple other guys that went to
Okay.
the NBA, but they had a squad, and uh, it was my first college game. And my favorite teammate of all time, I call him a Swiss Army knife, Mike Crayon, great, great player. He We were in the tunnel about to run out, and I'm visibly nervous. The first time I had been in that type of environment. I played in front of big crowds, but it's ACC, first game of the season. I'm like, it's a lot. And we're in the hallway bouncing, and Mike's bouncing around. He's from Kansas City. He goes, "Boy," he said, "when the lights come on, that's when the stars come out." And that stuck with me. And if you go back and look at my career, I was in top 10 a couple of times in my basketball career for hitting buzzer beaters or go ahead shots or stuff like that, or making big plays. So I
Mhm.
remember always looking at like the trajectory of my career of like, I was like, oh, I was always hitting big shots or a part of big plays or really embracing the moment. So that was something that really stood out to me in my freshman year. It's something I stick with me, not just in basketball, but in life
Yeah.
of embracing those big moments, of embracing the uncomfortable environments, and yeah, it's really stood out to me.
What has been one of the biggest challenges you faced in your athletic career, and then how did you overcome it?
I was this close to transferring over to University of Washington and play for Lorenzo Romar and those guys back in the day. It was a real awakening when it comes to the coaches at the college level and how the college basketball and football is one big business. And it has given me an opportunity to be able to guide these young people on mentoring and helping them prioritize their well-being before the well-being of these schools or these
Hmm.
coaches. I stayed at Oral Roberts, and I tore my L5 and L4 that fall in my back, and it was that year was one of the most depressing basketball years ever. So I have all these expectations. I'm in magazines. I'm picked as preseason first team here, and I'm like, okay, I'm right on trajectory. Like, the NBA is in sight. I have Sam Presti from OKC coming down and talking to my coaches. I have this scout looking at me. I have Lee. I had all these interests from NBA scouts, and I'm like, man, like I was legitimately in my mind, like I'm right there. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make it. Junior year, I tear my L5 and L4, put on like 15, 20 pounds, because I'm not practicing. I'm eating still. They put me on Oxycontin. So I'm going to practice every day and I'm numb because I practiced one day. I couldn't walk the next day. So they put me on Oxycontin, and I'm missing 3 or 4 days of practice. I play a game. I can't walk the next day. And it was that was my repetitiveness because we were a really good team that year. We went like 26-6 that year, and we were really good. So I got kind of pressured into not redshirting, because I was a good player and everything, but they weren't thinking of my well-being first and foremost. So that was a really, really hard year. And I was literally that whole entire year, my narrative in my mind was, it's over. Like, it's over. My opportunities are over. I'm not going to the NBA. No one's going to want me professionally. This year is going to ruin everything for me. Fast forward that summer, Clint Parks, a really close brother of mine, we had a heart to heart, and he's like, yo, you dedicated literally half your life to making it to this big goal. Are you going to sit and feel sorry for yourself and say F it? Or are you going to, commit? And we got to change a lot of things. We had a new strength conditioning coach come in at the end of that junior year. I was 19% body fat. I went from 90% body fat to 5% body fat going into my senior year. I lost 20 pounds. And everything. Yeah, then that year I'm leading the country in rebounding for a first portion of the season. I'm a 20-10 guy in the conference. And that's where everything started to come back, where I was like, okay, I could still, I still have opportunity. And
on a lighter note, looking back, is there like a moment or accomplishment that you're proud of, like a particular one?
It was a really proud moment when the Boston Globe did an article on me when I signed with the Celtics. And they're emphasizing in the article, Damen Bell-Holter of the Haida tribe. And after that article, they ran the diagnostics on it, and people Googled the Haida tribe 10,000 times. Okay. So that was one of my proudest moments of just having the opportunity for people to be like, oh, like, this guy is very proud of his culture more so, but man, like, look who he comes from. Like, when people address me, people don't say Damen Bell-Holter, the native guy. It's like, he's Haida, because everybody knows, like, I'm Haida first and foremost, because that's how I grew up, and that's where I'm proud to say where I'm from.
What are some of your goals or milestones that you hope to achieve in the next coming years?
How can I help communities build programming that's sustainable, that doesn't rely on me? And then how can I help them build capacity so that their locals are taking control of their narrative? And that's what I expressed this last week after the election. I was doing a workshop back in the classroom with them, and that's what I told them, is like, hey, you are all responsible for the well-being and the progression of your community, and we can't rely on the government. We can't rely on these people to save us, because they don't really. That's the reality. We got to be honest with our kids. They don't care about us. So we have to take control of that. So that's what I'm really passionate about right now.
And so what are some of the values or lessons from your Indigenous background that guide you still today in your career?
I think it's interesting too. We're trying to remain humble. Like, that's a big thing too, of always being humble and my journey. And I always tell people, and I'm very open about my journey, of a lot of ego death, and because that's how I was expressing to people. The biggest challenge for me, and you know this as an athlete, the biggest challenge for me when kind of transitioning was letting go of the ego, because the ego that's required to make it at the level that I was at, or, at the divisional level period, the professional ranks, can be viewed as arrogance in everyday life. You have to have a certain type of bravado and belief system to yourself. Otherwise, you're going to be eaten alive. And that was a big part for me of staying humble. Community. It's all about community. I'm nothing without my community. I'm nothing without everybody, my ancestors, my chana, all the people who taught my mother, her cultural bearers. Like, I'm nothing without any of them. So those are I think that'd be one of the biggest values I took from my culture, was stay humble and understand it's not about you.
Finally, what advice would you give to young Indigenous athletes who look up to you and who dream of, pursuing their sports dreams, either collegiate or professionally?
Yeah, go back to that. Stay humble. Be humble, but start the process of healing. There's so many of us that we're all late and everything. And a big part of my journey has me having to acknowledge, mistakes that I've made, and, and having to own where I haven't shown up and been the best version of myself. And those are things I have to reconcile with. So that's what I would encourage any young, dream chaser, and that's an athlete, that's a non-athlete, whatever the case is always remember where you come from, stay humble, and make sure that you're always seeking out mentors and advice. You have to start that process of growing yourself, especially for the athletes, growing yourself away from the court or away from the field. Acknowledging that you probably, and that's the reality, majority of us have come up in trauma. So acknowledging, your traumas and start working through them, start finding coping mechanisms, start finding language as early as possible.
Winning Gatorade Player of the Year was I was the first person in my school history to win it. I have a banner up at my gym in my high school, and I don't get to go back that often, but I went back last year and I saw it, and I was like, wow, that it just materialized, I think, for me, just because I was in the gym and I was like,